3.
Julie and I each other to talk to you about Cambridge exams and TBL.
Hello, I'm assuming I can start. Been having a bit of a difficult day with the technological problems, and I had my first root canal work this morning, and the dentist drilled a big hole and pulled it out and showed me the blood that was left on the drill bit and said that happens if you don't brush your teeth. So that's a lesson to all of you. Okay, so I better crack on. I don't have a lot of time. And thank you for being so understanding about the technical difficulties I've been having. This session is useful for anybody who teaches the Cambridge exams and wants to know a bit more about task-based learning. So, first couple of questions for you to think about. What is TBL and what is the typical staging of a TBL lesson? And you can use some of the phrases in the word cloud to help you. Okay, so as I said, we don't have a lot of time. Hopefully you have a few ideas already. This is a very brief overview of TBL. I'm going to give you no more than 30 seconds to read it. Okay, that was 30 seconds. I see a few of you have already added some comments to the chat box. Yes, too long to read, but it's very hard to summarize it in fewer words. Okay, pre-stage task, good. Yeah, so I think you've identified there are 3 parts to a task-based lesson, which is in the 3rd paragraph there. Don't worry if you miss anything because you can watch the video later. Now, the structure of a TBL lesson, again, I tried to condense this as much as possible. If you don't have time to read all of it, just read the 3 points at the top there. All right, so pre-task, task cycle, language focus. Again, if you're interested in this kind of thing, there's a wealth of resources out there, and not all of the sources agree. Noonan, his interpretation of task-based learning is a bit different from Willis's, for example. Somebody's asking, what's the primary difference with TBL and PBL? The answer is, I don't know. Okay. So how could TBL be used to prepare students for the Cambridge exams? Any ideas? Okay. I'm going to show you how TBL can be used to teach the CAE speaking part 2. So I want you to imagine that you are students for the next 5 minutes or so, and I'll take you through the stages of a TBL lesson with the Cambridge Advanced Speaking Part 2. So the first thing you will get students to do is to discuss in pairs the following 3 questions. If it's a one-to-one class, this could also be adapted. You could just ask the student to think about these questions individually for a moment. And then you would get feedback on these. So the answers to these questions are: you must talk about 3 pictures in part 2 is false. You talk about 2 pictures. And should you describe the pictures? Not at advanced level. You should compare and speculate about the pictures. And yes, you will speak for 1 minute about the pictures. So now students have an overview of what they're expected to do in Cambridge Advanced Speaking Part 2. Then you give them an opportunity to actually do the task. So it works well. One is the interlocutor, the other is the candidate. Together do the task. They can take turns. If this is a one-on-one class, then obviously the student just does the task. I'm not going to give you a minute, but I'll give you 30 seconds to think about the kind of language that students would be producing when doing this task. Okay, so students would do the task and then they would discuss in pairs how their partner did during this task. How did they answer the first question? How did they answer the second question? Did they manage to speak for a whole minute? Were they significantly under? And then you would talk about that as a class. Maybe the partner can tell about their partner, so the interlocutor can report on the candidate, how they performed, just to get some feedback. We're not too interested in errors and language at this stage, but it's very hard to resist the urge to want to correct. I suppose you can if you want, or you could leave it for later on, leave the correction to before they do the task again, as you wish. Then the next stage is that the teacher does the task. So the teacher provides a model of how to do the task. So here's a task for you. How do I answer the first question? How do I answer the second question? Do I manage to talk for a whole minute? So off I go. And look at the pictures to help you. So the girl with the blue bag might be reading a religious text because the book is small and tattered, whereas the woman next to her must be reading something which doesn't require too much concentration, since she's also listening to music. The people in the library, however, must be reading something to do with their academic studies. They might be working on a project, for example. I can understand why it's important to read on public transport. It's often quite crowded, and reading is a way to cope with this stressful situation. Also, if you have to commute, you probably spend a lot of time on public transport, so reading stops you from getting bored. As for the people in the library, reading is essential for university students. The books probably contain information that the students need to finish an assignment. In fact, books are still undoubtedly the most important source of information in the modern world. So, did I speak for a whole minute? I believe I was just under, because I'm trying to do this a little bit faster. Gordana writes, don't have to be religious. No, but we are speculating at this point, so that is my speculation. So students would discuss in pairs, how did their teacher do? How did I answer the first question? How did I answer the second question? Did I manage to speak for a whole minute, and what useful language did I use? And then we would talk about that in open class. So I've taken you through some of the stages of a task-based learning lesson. Can you remember what they are up until now? I did actually put the heading of the stage at the top of the slide. Well, don't worry if you don't remember, because I'll just recap. So we had the pre-task. This was when I asked true-false questions about the Cambridge Advanced Speaking Part 2. It was very brief, but it still helped them prepare for the task. Another thing you could do is brainstorm useful language relating to the pictures. That would be a good pre-task as well. Then we had the task, where the students actually do the task. The planning was very brief. It was basically feedback with your partner on how you performed, and then the report, moving from the private, which is the planning, to the public, which is the report, is where they shared their feedback on how they felt they performed during the task. And stage 5 is the analysis of the model. To be able to analyze a model, you have to introduce it. So for me, a good way to do that is simply to do the task yourself. And I'm reading from a script because I want to give students a copy of this to analyze later on in the lesson. And the analysis of the model can be broken down into several stages. So first of all, it was a listening task. Okay, listen, how do I answer these questions? And a following analysis task could be find words in the text above which mean these. So this is giving them useful language for when they do the task again later on. Another analysis task could be working with grammar, might be reading, must be reading, what's the difference? There's some useful collocations in my model, and there's also some useful linkers for comparing, so whereas, while. And all this is useful language which the students can use. They can mine the text, the model, for use in the task which they're going to do again. So that's not part of Willis's task-based learning structure. For Willis, the lesson would end there, so that there would be no further opportunity for practice, which is why I said some people have different views about how TBL should be implemented. This is more like task, teach, task. You're giving them the opportunity to do it again. And there are various, yes, repetition of the task is widely used, absolutely. I think it comes naturally to want to give the students an opportunity to repeat the task, a retrial, because invariably the second time they do it, it's going to be better, which is good for building confidence. Before they do that task again, they could have a gap fill of the original model text. There could be some sentence transformation to work on linkers which you want them to use in the following task. They could do the original task again, or they could do a similar task to the original task. So maybe talking about a slightly different set of pictures. Unfortunately, I don't have time to read all of the comments that you're making, but it's really good that you're making comments. Hannah says, but using a different set of materials or the same. I don't feel that students get bored when they do the same task again. They like the opportunity to do the task again. Test, teach, test. Yeah, I mean, there's an overlap between test, teach, test, and task-based learning. And you could argue the first task is a diagnostic. It's also an opportunity for students to notice the gap between the first time they do the task and the second time they do the task. So I'm going to leave you with the following. How could TBL be used to teach other parts of the Cambridge speaking exam? So you've got speaking part 1, speaking part 3, speaking part 4. And could TBL be used in other papers? I have no idea how much time I've got left. So I'll just twiddle my thumbs until none. Okay. Okay. Well, feel free to continue contributing comments relating to those last two questions. There are many ways that task-based learning could be used to teach the other Cambridge exams. I think that it's natural for students to do one exam task, then have some kind of feedback on that, and to do another exam task, which is more like test, teach, test. With the writing, obviously write an answer, maybe put that to one side, look at a model, and then mine the model, and then improve your original answer. Okay, that's it for me. I hope this was useful. It's a really good lesson, and I've used it myself, and it'll go for about an hour and a half. Thanks a lot.
Great, fantastic. Big fan of TBL myself, so great to see somebody promoting it and spreading the word, spreading the news. So thank you very much.